Hello students, and welcome back to yet another video of business economics macro, right? So this is your third unit we are studying, and we'll be studying part one of your third unit. So in this unit, will understand various theories, right? The theories of output and employment, right? So as you all know, our online lectures are going on for senior college. So theories of output and employment, this is the topic for this particular unit. So the very first theory I want to cover is the classical theory of employment by J.B. Say. Now the theory of full employment of classical economists is based on J.B. Say's law of market. So according to him, supply creates its own demand. So it means that production of goods will create demand for them also. So the classical theory assumes over the long period the existence of full employment without inflation. Given wage price flexibility, there are automatic competitive forces in the economic system that tend to maintain full employment and make the economy produce output at that level in the long run. So, thus, full employment is regarded as a normal situation, and any deviation from this level is something abnormal, since competition automatically pushes the economy towards full employment. This is what it is assumed in this particular theory. So, there are few assumptions, like we know economics is social science. So, all the theories and laws are based on some assumptions. So, what are the assumptions of this particular theory? There is normal situation of full employment without inflation. There is perfect competition in labor, money, and product markets. Labor is homogeneous. Labor output of the economy is divided between consumption and investment expenditures. The quantity of money is given, and money is the only medium of exchange. Wages and prices are flexible. Next is money wages and real wages are directly related to the relationship and it's proportional. Capital stock and technological knowledge are given in the short run. And last is there is laissez-faire capitalist economy without foreign trade. So this is what it is said by Say's law. So Say's law of market is the core of the classical theory of employment. So, Say is an economist in a 19th century French economist gave the proposition that supply creates its own demand. So, this is known as Say's law. In Say's own words, it is production which creates markets for goods. So, a product is so sooner created than it from that instant affords a market for other products to the full extent of its own value. So nothing is more favorable to the demand of one product than supply of another, right? So in its original form, the law was applicable to a barter economy, barter economy where goods are ultimately sold for goods. So every good brought to the market creates a demand for some other goods. So Say argued that since work is unpleasant, no person will work to make a product, right, unless he wants to exchange it for some other product which he desires. So, therefore, the very act of supplying goods by a large number of small producers implies a demand for them from producers of other goods. So, in each situation, there cannot be general overproduction because supply of goods will not exceed demand as a whole. So this classical considered that particular goods may be overproduced because the producer incorrectly estimates the demand of the product which other want. But this is the temporary phenomenon for the excess production, like of particular product, can be corrected in time by reducing its production. So even after 100 years, James Mill, another economist, he supported Say's law. He said that consumption is coextensive with production, and production is the cause and the sole cause of demand. So it never furnishes supply without furnishing demand. Both at the same time are both to an equal extent, right? So whatever the amount of annual produce, it can never exceed the amount of annual demand. This was what it was said. So thus supply creates its own demand, and there cannot be general overproduction and hence general unemployment. So the classical logic was that existence of money does not alter the working of the basic law. Say's law is, in a very broad way, is a description of a free exchange economy, basically. So conceived, it eliminates the truth that the main source of demand is the flow of factor income generated from the process of production itself. So when producers obtain the various inputs like land, labor, capital to be used for production process, they generate the necessary income accruing to the factor owners in the form of rent, wages, and interest respectively, right? So this in turn causes adequate demand for the goods produced. In this way, supply creates its own demand. So this reasoning is based on the assumption that all income earned by the factor owners is automatically spent in buying commodities which they help to produce. So you remember circular flow of income you have studied. So the classical further maintain that what is not consumed is saved, and that all savings out of income is automatically invested in the capital markets. So thus, in a state of equilibrium, saving must equal investment, right? If there is a divergence between the two, equality is maintained through the mechanism of the rate of interest, right? So the higher is the rate of interest, the higher is the savings, and vice versa. We also go for it, right? So on the contrary, the lower the rate of interest, the higher demand for investment funds, and vice versa. So if any of, given a given time, investment exceeds saving, the rate of interest would rise. So saving would increase and investment would decline till the two are equal and the full employment at the full employment level. So this is because saving is regarded as an increasing function of the interest rate, and investment a decreasing function of the investment rate. So this helps establish the equilibrium condition of saving investment equality actually. So this process of generation of equality between saving and investment is shown in the figure, where SS is the saving curve, as you can see, and II is the investment curve. The two curves intersect at the point E, where rate of interest gets determined at the level of OR. Okay, can you see? And both savings and investment are equal to OA. So if there is any increase in investment, the investment curve shifts to the right and it is shown as IT curve, right? So at the interest rate OR, investment is greater than savings. According to the classical economists, the savings curve SS remains at its original level when there is any increase in the investment. To maintain the equality between saving and investment, the rate of interest will rise. So this is shown in the figure to rise from OR to OR1. At the interest rate, the saving curve SS intersects the investment curve II at point E1. So consequently, both saving and investment equal the quantity shown as OB, from OA to OB. So thus, whatever is saved gets invested through interest rate flexibility. You're getting the point? So this is how the equilibrium is obtained. Understood? Now, the next theory we will study is Keynes' criticism on classical theory of employment. Now, what you have studied is classical theory of employment by Say. Now, the criticism on the same theory given by Say was given by Keynes. Now, Keynes has attacked the classical theory of employment for its unrealistic assumptions. He criticized classical theory on the following grounds, right? The first one was unrealistic assumption of full employment. Keynes rejected the fundamental classical assumption of full employment equilibrium in the economy. He considered it as unrealistic. He regarded them full employment as a special situation. And the general situation in the capitalist economy is one of underemployment, he said. So it can never be full employment because in such economies, investments are not only inadequate, but also usually fluctuate. Now, this is because why the capitalist society does not function according to Say's law. The supply always exceeds its demand. So we find millions of workers are prepared to work at the current wage rate and even below it, but they do not find work. So thus the existence of involuntary unemployment in capitalist economy proves that underemployment equilibrium is a normal situation and full employment is an abnormal and accident. So this is the first ground on which Keynes criticized the Say's theory. The second is refutation of Say's law. He refuted it. Keynes refuted Say's law of market that supply always created its own demand. He maintained that all income earned by the factor owners would not be spent in buying products which they help to produce. It's not that way. A part of the earned income is saved and is not automatically invested because saving and investment are distinct functions, he suggested. So when all earned income is not spent on consumption goods and a proportion of it is saved, the result is a deficiency of aggregate demand. So this leads to general overproduction because all that is produced is not sold. So this in turn leads to general unemployment. Thus, Keynes rejected Say's law that supply created its own demand. Instead, he argued that it was demand that created supply. When aggregate demand rises to meet that demand, firms produce more and employ more people, right? The third criticism that Keynes gave was self-adjustment not possible. Keynes did not agree with the classical view that the laissez-faire policy was essential for an automatic and self-adjusting process of full employment equilibrium. That is, he pointed out that the capitalist system was not automatic and self-adjusting. Why? Because of the non-egalitarian structure of its society. There are two principal classes, the rich and the poor. So the rich possess more wealth, but they do not spend the whole on its consumption. But whereas the poor lack money of purchase consumption goods. Thus, there is general deficiency of aggregate demand in relation to aggregate supply, which leads to overproduction and unemployment in economy. This, in fact, led to a Great Depression. So, had the capital system been automatic and self-adjusting, this would not have occurred. But Keynes therefore advocated state intervention for adjusting supply and demand within the economy through fiscal and monetary measures, right? The next criticism is equality of saving and investment through income changes. The classists believed that saving and investment were equal to the full employment level. And in case of any divergence, the equality was brought about by the mechanism of rate of interest. Keynes held that the level of spending, that the level of saving depended upon the level of income and not on the rate of interest. Similarly, investment is determined not only by rate of interest, but by the marginal efficiency of capital. So a low rate of interest cannot increase investment if business expectations are low. So if saving exceeds investment, it means people are spending less on consumption, right? So as a result, demand declines and there is overproduction and foreign investment, income, employment and output as well. So it will lead to reduction in savings and ultimately the equality between saving and investment will be attained at a lower level of income. Thus, it is variations in income rather than an interest rate that brings the equality between saving and investment. Understood? The next criticism is importance of speculative demand for money. The classical economists believed that money was demanded for transactions and precautionary purposes. They did not recognize the speculative demand for money because money held for speculative purposes related to idle balances. So, but Keynes did not agree with this view. He emphasized the importance of speculative demand for money. He pointed out that the earning of interest from assets meant for transactions and precautionary purposes may be very small at a low rate of interest, right? So, but a speculative demand for money would be infinitely large at the low rate of interest. So thus the rate of interest will not fall below a certain minimum level and the speculative demand for money would become perfectly interest elastic. So this is Keynes' liquidity trap, which the classists failed to analyze. Okay. The next criticism by Keynes is money not neutral. The classical economists regarded money as neutral. Therefore, they excluded the theory of output, employment, and interest rate from monetary theory. According to them, the level of output and employment and the equilibrium rate of interest were determined by real forces. Although Keynes criticized the classical view that monetary theory was separate from value theory. He integrated both the theories and brought the theory of interest in the domain of monetary theory by regarding the interest rate as a monetary phenomenon. He integrated the value theory and the monetary theory through the theory of output. This he did by forging a link between the quantity of money and the price level via the rate of interest. Like for instance, when the quantity of money increases, the rate of interest falls, investment increases, income and output increases, demand increases, factor cost and wages increase, relative prices increase, and ultimately the general price level rises. Thus, Keynes integrated money and real sectors of the economy. So he criticized this on this ground. The next one, there's last one, second last one maybe, is refutation of wage cut. He refuted this assumption as well, that and criticized that Keynes refuted the Pigouvian formulation that a cut in money wage could achieve full employment in the economy. The greatest fallacy in Pigue's analysis was that he extended the argument to the economy which was applicable to a particular industry, right? So reduction in wage rate can increase employment in an industry by reducing cost and increasing demand, but the adoption of such a policy for the economy leads to reduction in employment. So when there is a general wage cut, the income of the workers is reduced. As a result, aggregate demand falls, leading to a decline in employment. So from the practical viewpoint, also Keynes never favored a wage cut policy. Because in modern times, workers have formed strong trade unions, which resist a cut in the money wage. They would resort to strikes, right? The consequent unrest in the economy would bring a decline in output and income. So, moreover, social justice demands that wages should not be cut if profits are left untouched. So, therefore, he refuted the theory on these grounds. The next is no direct and proportionate relation between money and real wages. Keynes also did not accept the classical view that there was a direct proportional relationship between money wages and real wages. While according to him, there is an inverse relationship between the two. When money wages falls, real wages rise and vice versa. Therefore, reduction in the money wage would not reduce the real wage as the classists believed. Rather, it would increase it. This is because why? Because the money wage cut will reduce cost of production and prices by more than the former. So, thus the classical view that fall in real wages will increase, employment breaks down. Keynes, however, believed that employment could be increased more easily through monetary and fiscal measures rather than by reduction in money wages. So, moreover, institutional resistance to wage and price reductions are so strong that it is not possible to implement such a policy administratively and in real life. The next criticism is state intervention essential. Keynes did not agree with Pigues that frictional maladjustment alone account for failure to utilize fully our productive power. The capitalist system is such that left to itself it is incapable of using productive powerfully. Therefore, state intervention is necessary. So the state may directly invest to raise the level of economic activity or to supplement private investment. It may pass legislation recognizing trade unions, fixing minimum wages, and providing relief to workers through social security measures. Therefore, as observed, it is bad politics if it should be considered good economics to object to labor unions and to liberal labor legislation. So Keynes favored state action to utilize fully the resources of the economy for attaining full employment. The last criticism is long run analysis is unrealistic. The classes believed in the long run full employment equilibrium through a self-adjusting process. Keynes had no patience, right, to wait for the long run, that he believed that in the long run we are all dead, right? So his philosophy of life, that Keynes, was essentially a short-term philosophy. His analysis is confined to short-run phenomena. Unlike the classists, he assumes taste, habits, techniques of production, supply of labor, etc., to be constant. during the short period and so neglect long run influence on demand, right? So assuming consumption demand to be constant, he lays emphasis on increasing investment to remove unemployment. But the equilibrium level so reached is one of the underemployment rather than of full employment. Thus, the classical theory of employment is unrealistic and is incapable of solving the present day economic problems of the capitalist world. On these particular 10 grounds, Keynes criticized the SAYS theory, the classical theory. Okay, so today we cover two topics for the third unit. You go through the video, study, make notes, and if any doubts, you can ask me. See you in the next video of the third unit. Thank you so much.